Ah, Pikmin. Such cute creatures. It makes it so satisfying when you see them horrifically die by explosives, arson, or even a mild case of being eaten by a large beast. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. This series got its origin from the Mario 128 tech demo that was shown off in Space World 2000. When thinking for the title of this demo, Nintendo just went, huh. This demo looked to be for the start of a sequel to Super Mario 64, and 7 years later these assets would be reused for Super Mario Galaxy, but it would mainly result in the conception of Pikmin. Pikmin was also originally supposed to be a game where you could watch two humans develop. The only thing that wasn't scrapped from this project, aside from the Mario 128 assets, was this thing. Okay, you scrap everything except for the thing that looks like a fetus. A trailer for the game would later appear in Luigi's Mansion, a launch title for the GameCube. This was because Pikmin was supposed to be the debut showing of what the graphics of the GameCube could do. This was even further enforced when Nintendo showed this as one of their premier games in E3 2001. There would be so many objects on the screen, all moving at once. For the time, this was pretty impressive. So the game was released about a month later, on October 26, 2001. And the game opens with a man named Olimar crashing down to Earth. I mean, BNF 404. After he's hit by an asteroid. When he lands on the planet, all of his ship parts separate from the base of his ship in places that are most convenient for the level design. But then he realized if that wasn't enough, he only has 30 days to get off this planet until he dies. So that's where the most controversial element of this game comes from, the day limit. Many people say that this is what stops them from enjoying the game, as they would rather explore the game's areas with no restrictions. And I can't dispute the fact that this would have been a very different game. Yes, I'd rather have the threat of death than not. Not now! In reality, it brings a bit of tension to the game, and gives purpose to trying to complete the game in the quickest possible time. It's not like the game has a super strict time limit or anything. You have plenty of time to get all the ship parts, which is why Olimar probably doesn't have a bucket list prepared. But that isn't the main gist of the gameplay, because that revolves around these guys. You can throw them, you can chuck them, you can charge them. These guys are the ultimate soldiers. They can be used to kill the wildlife, which can be brought back to their base to harvest their corpse in order to multiply the Pikmin numbers. Miyamoto got the idea for this game from gardening. 100 of these guys can be pulled out into the field at a time, and this was just Nintendo trying to flex the quality of their new system. And on the topic of each of the Pikmin's untimely death, if a whole bunch of them die, I'll restart the day, but if only like 1 or 2 of them die, I'll try and pretend nothing happened. It doesn't affect me at all. But you might ask, how does one throw a Pikmin? This one. The answer to this question mainly boils down to what version of the game you prefer. Even though it was originally a title for the GameCube, it did get a spotlight in the very short-lived Wii Motion Plus series. I grew up with this version of the game, and the controls for throwing the Pikmin are extremely fluid and feel great. I still like the GameCube version more though. I don't know why, but when I got this controller, everything just screamed comfortable! Even if the game wasn't made for this controller, I'd make it work. And it seems to be the unpopular opinion, but I love controlling this game with the joystick. Even the C-stick got a great use as the way you can get your Pikmin to crowd a certain object. Both versions of the game are great, but I'm a purist. And the enemies you'll be throwing your Pikmin at are just as great. None of them absolutely demolish Pikmin, but they could kill a few if you can't grasp the proper strategy for beating them, like aim for the back or wait until he pounces. And the designs for these enemies are definitely on point as well. They feel familiar and otherworldly at the same time, as well as being able to pose a constant threat to all of your Pikmin. There's even a bestiary of sorts at the end of the credits that describe the enemies while using more effort than I use on my English exams. And these enemies are found in the game's beautiful worlds and environments. These environments are open and pose quite a few fun puzzles. While some ship parts are out in the open, some are behind puzzles like this one where you have to switch between yellow and blue Pikmin. These levels just feel good to go through, as I can either try and plan out the best way to clear out an area of enemies and ship parts, or I could just say, screw it. There are 5 of these areas, with one being the beginning stage, 3 being run-of-the-mill, and the other one being the last. And like the stupid Nintendo fan that I am, I'll try and analytically decide which one is the best. The impact site is a fine enough starting area, but there's not that much to it, and everything feels a bit claustrophobic. There's this area where you fight a different boss depending on which day you're on, but both of them suck, so that takes away from the cool factor just a bit. You will backtrack here for a day if you want to get a ship part and some more Pikmin, but it doesn't last long enough to leave an impact on me. The Forest of Hope is really good. There are so many things you can do here. You can build these bridges, get the yellow Pikmin, or even fight this bird. Everything in this stage is really well designed and fun. And at no point did I go, well that was stupid, or, oh wait, it wasn't plugged in. My only gripe with this stage is that you don't have the blue Pikmin yet when you arrive, so you won't be able to get all of the ship parts on your first visit. With the impact site, it was too small for me to care, but this is just a bit annoying. Pikmin 3 had it worse though. The forest navel is dark and scary. Ah! This area has an atmosphere that you don't see very often in Pikmin games. You're not in a nice and bright environment like every other Pikmin location ever. You're in the middle of a dark forest. And if you discredit 80% of Pikmin 2, that's pretty neat. You do discover blue Pikmin here, and although they're not put to their full potential here, they still make for a fun inclusion. And this is probably the only area in the game that evenly uses all 3 types of Pikmin. The reds are able to take down the fiery blowhogs as well as walk through these fire spouts found in a few places. And the yellows have to be used to get this treasure at this high up platform, as well as being used to carry bomb rocks to stone walls in order to blow them up. And can I just mention how weird of a decision making bomb rocks a yellow exclusive ability is? In later games, all types of Pikmin carry bomb rocks, and yellows have a resistance to electricity. But in 2001, oh, look, a yellow Pikmin. What's your ability? Well, I can... And as I said, the blue Pikmin aren't at their full potential here, but they're implemented well enough. The ship parts here are fun to get as well, and none of them feel obtrusive or stupid. This area is right on par with the Forest of Hope. But what about the distant spraying? It isn't bad, but it just feels overly long and boring. I still have fun playing this stage, but it's so reliant on blue Pikmin that it hurts. There's water everywhere. And although I said that the Forest Naval didn't use the blue Pikmin at their full potential, at least it used all types equally. In this stage, you'll be using blue Pikmin way more than the other types. The only times you'll need to use the other Pikmin types are when you have to blow up some walls, defeat some enemies, or collect some ship parts. And even then, one of the 2 where you'll be using yellows can only be done by turning blue Pikmin into yellow Pikmin. It's a cool puzzle, and it's the only time that the candy pop buds ever get any use. But it feels so annoying how much I have to rely on the blue Pikmin. Using the blue Pikmin isn't inherently bad, I just wish it was more like the perplexing pool in Pikmin 2, where you could do one part of it with reds and yellows. And if you wanted to come back here for some more treasure, you could use the blue Pikmin to go through parts of the area you hadn't cleaned out. But even the part that's relying on blues knows when to let the other Pikmin types help out. And in one of the most memorable areas in Pikmin 2, you're restricted to only using blue Pikmin. And it isn't because they're super helpful for overcoming the obstacles you'll find within it. It's because they aren't. This allows for the game to make challenging obstacles for you, because the only perks that blues have is that they can't drown. And that's it. The game acknowledges the uselessness of the blues, which makes it all the more satisfying when you find a candy pop bud at the end of the area. If the distant spring had something like this, where you were restricted to only blue Pikmin at the start of the level, but you're eventually able to use the other Pikmin types once you build a bridge or something like that, it would have made this level so much better. Okay, now that that little tangent's out of the way, what else does the level have? Well, there's this one ship part with the stupidly tight corner. It reuses a boss from the Forest of Hope, and the one new boss it does have is a shirt stained with eyes. But although I just complain a whole bunch about the stage, it's still a decently fun time because of the parts where this doesn't exist. I'll be honest, I came out of this level a changed person. The final trial is alright. As a final level, it does its job. It puts the level of your Pikmin knowledge to the test, with obstacles having to do with all the different types of Pikmin. But the final boss itself isn't terrible. It's really challenging on your first attempt, and it's a type of difficulty you don't see very often in the game. But on repeat playthroughs, I just know to ambush him with bombs and he'll be dead in seconds. And those are all levels in Pikmin. It's a fine selection overall. It was nothing that blew me away, but it was some fun stuff to play through. The worst level was easily the Distant Spring, and as for the best level, the one named after a belly button. But outside of the main game, there's the challenge mode, and there was a bread bug that kept getting to me every time I played the first stage, so I haven't gone back to it since, and I probably never will. And that's Pikmin. It's a cute and fun game that requires you to think strategically about how to use your Pikmin to get all the parts you need in the shortest number of days possible. It's a great game, and a great start to a series of 3 games. Only 3. And even though it isn't that long of a game, I never get sick of playing it, no matter how many times I beat it. I'd say it's an easy recommendation if you have a GameCube or a Wii. But you know, maybe I just went in the challenge mode with a bad mindset. Okay, I just realized one of 2 things. 1, this isn't plugged in. And 2, this is an SNES controller.